You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Okay, this week, as every week, we give you the opportunity to enter a competition and to give us your views. I think many people have many views at the moment. I think, Eoin, you've done a reasonable job this week of trying to capture one of the wildest sporting weekends that I can remember.
It was pretty busy, to say the least. There's a couple of moments, I think, that probably punctuated the whole thing, from Derry yesterday to the scenes of Ronan O'Gara and his La Rochelle team celebrating on Saturday, to, of course, the match and all the scenes around the match in Paris on Saturday night. And you were on the ground in Paris on Saturday night, so I think that is the only place to start. Paris in general as an event, Ger, fair to say that this is rock bottom, in the reddest of the red of our Gillette Labs performance rankings this morning. Yeah, very, 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 very lucky that something incredibly serious didn't happen at a couple of different points. There could have been some very serious unrest in advance of the game, and then afterwards it felt like, this is one of the worst stewarded events that you're ever going to see. There was like a potential for multiple crushes, pre-game and post-game. The pre-game stuff, I kind of didn't see most of the pre-game stuff, and I ended up having to walk around to get my accreditation. But because of the way my accreditation was, I didn't have a ticket, and I managed to get like all the way to the stadium and to walk past anybody looking for tickets, any of the police looking for tickets. So that'll give you a sense of how easy it was to access the area, and so therefore loads of people who didn't have tickets were there. But I would hasten to add that did feel like they were locals as opposed to fans of any team. In fact, they were absolutely locals. So that kind of added to the tension pre-game. Then when the game was delayed, obviously it seems like most fans managed to get their seats. There's definitely stories of people who were so concerned about the pre-game that they decided not to go in. And then afterwards it was just bizarre. I was waiting to meet somebody, and kind of there's one area where you all get funneled down towards the train station. So you'd think this is going to be well marshalled because it's where everybody's going. Everybody's going to the train station. And at one stage, while I was waiting there, out of nowhere, it seemed riot police formed this kind of cordon to prevent people getting through, which was like where they had been told to go. And then all of a sudden, everybody turned around and started kind of coughing and heaving, and it was like, what's going on? Oh, what? There was no scenes of violence. There was nothing. No one had caused any trouble, and for like it seemed pure crowd control, they had decided that the way they were going to control the crowd to go in a different direction from where they were supposed to be going was by pepper spraying them. Well, so it was pepper spray, and I saw somebody else say that they saw canister. They got hit in the leg with a canister. So there must have been some tear gas as well. But this felt like pepper spray. Did you get it? Yeah. You couldn't not get it. What's that like? I mean, it's very unpleasant. It's not like I was tear gas once before, and that was horrific. But this was it dispersed pretty quickly. So afterwards, you see the scenes of them with like the little small ones, kind of like mosquito spray, like we're little mosquitoes to be sprayed, little ants that were the French cops. The French cops made a bollocks of it, basically. That's the long and the short of it. And they can have all of the investigations they want, but ultimately, the red herrings of some people showing videos of people climbing over stuff. Like at every big sports event, there are going to be some blaggers trying to get in, but you know this in advance because you've run sports events before. But what happened here was the French police made an absolute bollocks of it, and then UEFA came along and were like, "Oh, Liverpool. Let's blame the Liverpool fans. That's what's going to happen here." But it's not going to wash. Like, no, I think if there's one fan base in the world that it's not going to wash with as well, it's probably Liverpool fans, and I think it's gone down pretty terribly so far what UEFA have tried to do. Like, so from your perspective, the fact that you had accreditation as opposed to a spectator's ticket, that probably made your experience beforehand a lot more pleasant? I should say, did it? Because you kind of had more access to different areas, or you could maybe avoid certain bottlenecks, whereas you're a ticket holder, you're kind of stuck with one entrance, or what was that like?
At the end, yeah, eventually. But to get to where the accreditation centre was, I'd come up from the train station, then ended up doing a kind of lap, and you could see, like, I saw in Rob Draper's brilliant Twitter thread, he was talking about there was huge sponsor signs being held up, and then all these people in their suits who were like the Prawn Sandwich Brigade, and they were all hemmed in. I was like, this is very interesting. I mean, they've all paid a lot of money for these corporate tickets, and they're not getting in. And it did take ages to get from the train station to the ground. So you were definitely feeling, okay, I've got about an hour here before kickoff is scheduled.
So you were there an hour before kickoff?
Yeah.
Because I would have thought that you needed to be in there a lot earlier than that to have actually got in on time, it seemed. Cause
by the time we got to the ground, because everything had slowed down at that point, it was still an hour before.
Okay.
And you could wander around if you were just on your own, around the back of the stuff, and ultimately it was actually after the match that I felt the most hairy, because after we got through that bottleneck where so the cops tear gas people or whatever it was to slow them down. After you got down there was this kind of very slow moving march, which kind of it cleared a little bit, and then there was the local youths waiting for. I got pickpocketed on the way in. Actually, that was the other thing that happened.
What was taken?
Nothing in the end, because I grabbed the hand.
So you saw the guy doing it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. He just kind of was like, "What do you? No."
What's meaning? You're not going to let me pickpocket you?
Exactly. You could see though that because there was no cordon. Anybody who wanted to do anything could come in, and most people had their tickets on their phones, and so therefore phones were high currency, and so you can see how if you were of a mind to try and get a fan who's in a tight area, that you could easily kind of bump up against. So all in all, you would say it was one of the worst organised sports events. Well done, Paris.
And just one last thing then on the gang of youths.
On the way back, yes. Yeah, so you get kind of funneled past them. So it's like, relatively easy pickings. At that point, you're getting down to the train station, right? And then all of a sudden the queues start again, and the train station, the queue stops at the train station, and you're like, we're going underground here. The only thing relieving the queues at that point are the trains coming. So you're relying on the trains as this pressure valve. And if the pressure valve gets delayed or something happens, nothing's going to stop it. The people are going to keep coming behind you. So
that's terrifying.
You're desperately trying not to think, well, this isn't very good, is it? I mean, this could go pear-shaped pretty quickly, couldn't it? So there were loads of police, but they were standing around at one stage kind of doing nothing. And they looked like they were riot police who were really only there to deal with whatever riot they had predicted, as opposed to stewarding police who were like, okay, you're going here, you're going here, you're going to the city centre, you're going to it. There was no sense of that.
And is there I wonder what happened, how did this actually occur, given, as you say, the amount of French thing to be we're not working with 2 months notice or whatever. Or
no, you can't. No, because again, to go back to Rob Draper's thing, he was talking about there was one specific area where 3 vans have been parked to make everything narrow, but that seemed to be the situation. So we had a friend who went to the game and like that had ended up kind of, the whole crowd had been funneled into one of those tiny little corridors. In all the stadiums, there's this kind of, when you're going up the stairs, the stairs are kind of narrow, but if everybody was going through the same stairs at the same time for all of the outside area where they were going to sit, so say you took Croke Park or the Aviva, particularly the Aviva, if there's, you're going down the stairs after the match, if everybody was going down the same stairs and that was the only access or egress areas that people had, that's kind of what it felt like. It was like, we're going to funnel everybody in here. And the other thing is, if there's nobody telling you where to go, you're like, everybody just follows the crowd, because that's what happens. And so, again, there's nobody either side saying, okay, this is grand, you're going to be here, and no, you need to go there. There was no sense of it being, managed. The notion that they didn't have enough time for it, that's nonsensical, I think. Like, and if they're going to use that as some kind of defence, it's like, well, then you can never have anything again. Thanks very much. The trouble with that is, of course, that like what happened at Wembley reflects horribly on England's ability and the English FA's ability and the Metropolitan Police, or whichever police force they had running that. But they're getting stuff again, and they're like, oh, that's nothing to do with us, that was just those crazy fans on cocaine. Now you can't be blaming the fans on cocaine, because actually it wasn't them, it's the police. And it's like, oh, maybe everybody's just forgotten how to steward big events in the aftermath of COVID. I don't know, but it did feel like it could have got pretty hairy pretty quickly. And the thing is, if it had got hairy, what were they going to do? Well, like, what's the contingency plan? What's the relief? How do you just bring everybody into the train stations and let them like walk on the tracks? I don't know.
The fan park stuff was pretty grim as well, and in many ways even more grim. Like the scenes from obviously Paris in the city, and that fan park that got tear gassed was horrendous. So like a friend of mine was in the fan park in Paris, didn't bother going to the game, when nowhere near Saint Denis, and the situation was that at full time there were people trying to maybe go out and exit should have gone out, or trying to find a spot in the fence to get out, basically trying to not go the way that the French authorities told them. And the French police's response was tear gas, like indiscriminate tear gas. Videos of people of all ages covering their eyes with what was being thrown at them. And then obviously you have that situation outside an Irish pub in the Paris city. The French police were on one on Saturday night.
They were absolutely on one. They'd all obviously been watching La Haine and taking their lead from history. I mean, they were like stereotypical French police. That's, they behaved the way I expect the French police to behave. Hardcore shit kickers with no real regard for anybody's enjoyment of the event. That's basically what happened. And I'm really looking forward to the Rugby World Cup. Really can't wait to see how France manages to steward the Rugby World Cup.
You wouldn't have got that in Breffni Park.
You probably wouldn't. Conor Moore was at the game. You know him as Conor Sketches, but he was on speaking with Joe Malloy yesterday, and his experience sounded absolutely horrific. They were there really early. They had 6 tickets. They'd bought the same tickets together, and one of them, they're like, oh, this is a fake ticket. And it's like, what? They're all the same. But eventually a steward let them in, because they were like, we have the 6 tickets here. They're clearly in sequence. It's not. But loads of people wouldn't have had that. And loads of people actually weren't even given the opportunity to explain, no, hang on, this is true. Andy Robertson was saying that some of his mates were like, no, that's a fake ticket. And I was like, I got it from Andy Robertson, like, by all accounts too, the tickets are easily copyable. So, I don't know. I mean, so UEFA have to take a portion of the blame. Definitely. And the French police have to take a portion of the blame. And given that it's UEFA's gig, it's their party, they're the ones hosting it, you would expect that they know a thing or two about hosting these at this stage. Like, it is literally the biggest game in world football.
What was it like being in the UEFA party when you eventually get in? The bouncer says, yes, tonight is your night, man.
I like the Real Madrid fans are amazing. They absolutely were. They were on one, and they were absolutely enjoying what was going on. Because the longer the match went on without a goal, the more tense it felt like the Liverpool fans got, and then all their worst fears are come true.
So from being inside the stadium, any other nuggets from what happened to Liverpool, or they just got absolutely Ancelotti'd? Is that what happened?
It seems that way. Yeah, I mean, there's been not that much analysis of the football because of what happened. So you'd hope that. I mean, I presume Klopp and everybody else, but you'd hope that they try and absorb some of the lessons of the smash and grab. I see Michael Owen's getting murdered for saying that, oh, they're still the best team in Europe. He's like, you'd have to say, I mean, they might still be the best team in Europe. I don't know. But, it's Real Madrid who have once again won the European Cup despite not being the best team in Europe. So fair play to them, because that's all that matters. And I say that in like the most glowing terms. Well done. We should all be taking a leaf from the most successful team in the history of world football.
Yeah, it's like some of the individual collections of Champions League trophies in that Real Madrid squad is absolutely ridiculous. Michael Owen saying that a team can beat a team that they're not necessarily better than is not exactly rocket science. It doesn't necessarily prove that, but I think really it's just you talk about running the gauntlet outside the stadium. I mean, Real Madrid ran the competitive gauntlet all season long and took the very, very hard path to the final. Like, listening to Klopp afterwards was interesting, that he was saying that Madrid are incredible. The possession was 50%, but we had more shots on target. But the most decisive one they scored and we did not. It's the most simple explanation in football. He was then saying, I think Madrid shot once and scored a goal. I respect them competitively. Whatever you do within the rules, it's fine. We've had to defend ourselves on many occasions. And I think maybe he's just a little bit upset with how Real Madrid set up, but gave them plenty of credit as well. Lots of respect for himself and Ancelotti at full time. And we've seen this in the last couple of weeks with Klopp as well. When things don't go Liverpool's way, he's not overly happy, which, again, isn't exactly a completely non-understandable reaction when your team has lost such a massive game. But actually, one of the more interesting things afterwards was Tony Cruz getting really pissed off with German TV.
I saw Cruz. I didn't hear what the crappy question was.
The question was essentially, it was giving Liverpool credit and the plan to keep them out. I don't have it in front of me here, but he said you had 90 minutes to come up with two shit questions, and walked away from the interviewer. Has another pop off him again when he's walking past. I think there's probably a bit of a pent-up frustration, maybe German coverage of football, and is it overly negative potentially? I don't know, but it seemed that there was a bit of beef there between Cruz, not necessarily and the reporter, but just I think it was kind of predictable potentially from his perspective. Two negative questions, he said. You can tell right away that you're German, he said.
Yeah. So, well, it turns out every footballer in every part of the world is subjected to the same thing, and maybe that's what makes him such a great footballer.
Potentially. Anyone in the flesh that stood out?
Well, Courtois is pretty good at football. The Real Madrid ability to always be in position and to manage to thwart the team who seem to be far superior to them, that is quite impressive.
Yeah.
And Trent's very good. This let's scapegoat Trent. I'm not down with that. Liverpool are not Liverpool without Trent, and so therefore you just have to realise that that's not going to be possible. Konate played very well. I don't know. I mean, it was very high end football. The Mo Salah killing the ball with, at pace however it comes to him, is also very impressive.
Were you singing your own team songs when Camila Cabello was singing?
No.
You weren't singing an Aston Villa song?
No.
In the dressing room?
Why are you supposed to?
She wasn't happy. She deleted a tweet. She said, playing back our performance, and I can't believe people were singing their team's anthem so loud during our performance. Like, my team and I worked tirelessly for so long to bring right vibes and give a good show.
Yeah.
Were the vibes right?
No, because everybody's like, why is the game delayed? What's going on? How did that happen? And so everybody's immediately on social media going, oh, hang on a second, what's happening? What are they doing? The cops are what? Oh, this doesn't sound good. Because, in the stadium, when you're not watching the TV, it's very hard for you to know exactly what's going on. Although apparently, according to Gary Neville, BT's coverage was crap. That was pretty interesting. Did you see this?
I actually didn't see Gary Neville's tweet.
I didn't see that. I just read about it in the back of the Telegraph. In fairness to the Telegraph, they're using it as another opportunity to kick Jake Humphries, which, on this show. Alan Tyres is the man you want to read this morning. In one of those inspirational interviews he's fond of, Humphrey once attributed his career success to never sitting in the comfy chair. Perhaps when occasions demand, football broadcasters need to get off the soft furnishings and out into the hard world of actual events. Gary Neville, Adam Crofton said, surprised BT Sport don't have a team on standby outside of stadium, getting little to no sense of the major story from the broadcaster. And Gary Neville replied, are you surprised? I'm not. They can't react or aren't agile to things like this happening. All right, shots fired. In fairness, Sky do have a news team who covered it really well.
Yeah, so that was the Champions League final. All of it, I guess, this morning in the red. One of the worst sporting events ever. Don't go to the Champions League final, says Gerard Gilroy. Provinces are next up in the amber this morning, because in fairness, there was a bit of glory yesterday from a neutral standpoint. That pitch invasion in Clonus, seeing the scenes with Derry winning their first Ulster Championship in 28 years. Connacht's final was a decent game as well. You had two teams of a similar standard going up against one another. But I think if we were talking about this on Saturday night, the provincial football situation would be rock bottom. It would be in the reddest of the reds. But I think what happened yesterday kind of brought it out of its slumber. How much of Kildare Dublin did you get to see on Saturday?
I chose to. This game didn't happen at the weekend. It got cancelled. I heard something about not enough people showing up, and so therefore they decided that they weren't going to play the game. Am I wrong?
No, that's exactly what happened. They just gave the cup to James McCarthy and they moved on.
He seemed very thrilled to be receiving said cup as well.
Yeah, no, he did. Obviously, it's very, very predictable. I mean, to a degree, there was definitely talk this year that maybe Leinster could have been competitive, and it wasn't. There was talk during the week that this game could have been predictable, or could have been competitive rather, and it wasn't. So, was it overly predictable that this was going to happen to Dublin? Like, I definitely had a hunch on Saturday afternoon that Dublin were going to kill him. That was just kind of like a match.
You did. You stuck it in the WhatsApp group. Yeah, I think all week long I was definitely trying to not get too carried away and didn't get too carried away. But you're still hopeful that something is going to happen. Like what I had hoped was that the vanilla defence that Kildare had been playing in the league and in the championship to date was somehow not putting something on tape for your opposition. But actually, it turned out it was the absence of a proper defensive strategy. And against the Dubs, that might be a bit of a problem. Particularly this form of the Dublin team, which are like in the cycle where they're trying to be explosive, and because their own defence is not great at the moment, they realise they're going to have to score massive scores to win matches against good teams, and they have the players to do that. So Dublin good at football. The provincial championships are a complete joke and need to be put out of their misery. But what's worse is we're going to get the Pigs Mickey next year of the round robins. As somebody reminded, was it somebody on late night GA last night was like, there's going to be a situation where the round robins happen and then one of the four teams gets eliminated.
Yeah.
Like, what? What are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we keeping these? I didn't see what the attendance figure was. Was it published?
I'm not sure what there was at Dublin Kildare.
But it wasn't just Dublin Kildare. It was Dublin Meath in the women's football.
Yeah.
And the Meath footballers are bringing about 10,000 to matches.
Yeah, true.
So I would say the Meath footballers, women's footballers, are potentially the biggest draw in Leinster football at the moment. Hannah Terrell scored a late goal. Dublin won. That rivalry is going to explode. Hopefully they'll play again later on in the year. Maybe in an All-Ireland final. Like, that's now the biggest game in Leinster football. But nobody, it seems, in Leinster football cared enough to advocate for something better. So they can all...
Yeah, what's interesting is that the two most depressing sporting events from the weekend were probably the Leinster men's senior football final and the Munster men's senior football final. And like we've spoken about this so much in the past, where nobody's getting anything out of this. Like the players aren't getting anything out of this, and that includes the Dublin and Kerry players. I think Brian Fenton was on the record last year as saying that Proposal B would have been a positive step. Declan Darcy was on the show saying Proposal B would have been a positive step. We know for a fact that we don't know what Dublin voted on the day. There's a suggestion that maybe they were anti-Proposal B. They definitely didn't come out in favour of Proposal B.
No, they never lobbied for it once. They never publicly said, we think this is a great idea. Actually, it's going to benefit us in the long run. And doing the numbers, it seems like they may well have voted against it. We can't say for sure, but... And
the same goes for Kerry. And in actual fact, what you can go on are the public pronouncements that were made around it. And again, Kerry didn't come out in favour of this thing at the time, even though we know that people coming out in favour of it would have made a difference, would have really made a positive difference. And Kerry instead, on the day of the vote, their chairman got up and said, we need a roadshow to bring this thing and lobby opinion around the country, because they just hadn't done their research.
More time. We need more time to talk about this. We've only had since 1884 to look at the provincial system, but we definitely need more time.
And I think that kind of spoke to Kerry and Dublin, both pussyfooting around the opportunity for change. So they've done their players a disservice, I think, because I really don't think the Dublin and Kerry players benefit from this whatsoever. Their careers are wasting away in provincial championships at the moment, and they can pretty much thank their county boards for that. But at this point, what is absolutely crazy is that even the provincial councils aren't benefiting from this. 14,500 people show up to Killarney on Saturday, an absolutely glorious afternoon, and 14,500 people show up for a Munster final. Like, it's absolute, that's I know, well, in fairness now, they were charging €40 for a stand ticket for Killarney on Saturday, so maybe they will actually make a hell of a profit off what's going on because the tickets are so expensive. But it seems to me that even the coffers are going to speak for themselves one way or another eventually, and that the provincial councils will surely realise that what they're trying to produce here is absolutely pointless. We obviously heard...
They don't care. They don't care.
No, and we got
the evidence
that from...
has been before their eyes for the best part of a decade, and they don't care.
And I think that probably the evidence was before everybody's eyes last year when the provincial officials were on the record in a multitude of different places talking about their views of change and, turkeys voting for Christmas and, change of Brexit proportions and potential disaster talk about what would have happened with change. They managed to keep the status quo, and probably more worryingly, they've managed to usher through change or something that masquerades as change for next year that might keep their house in order and keep their power base strong. And once again, we'll probably have a month or two of time wasted early next year when it could be much better spent, and these players could be much better served, the fans could be much better served, and the sport could be much better served. We're
stuck now with the Pigs Mickey for the next 3 or 4 years, because it'll be like, we can't go back to that, we have to see how it goes, we have to wait and see what the impact of this is because there's no evidence. And it's like, okay, well, we really know. We've actually built in the failure of this structure for the next number of years before we're going to be able to go back again and go, okay, please, let's just have a proper league-based system with 3 or 4 tiers, ideally 4, and away we go. Like, the game, notwithstanding all of the criticism of the Ulster football final, the game is actually in a much better place than it has ever been with regards to the skills, the tactical and technical ability and the proficiency of the players. Anyway.
Yeah, let's move on to the Greens. We've left probably 30 seconds for some dose of positivity for your Monday morning. Nottingham Forest, which an extra R in there for good measure. Their 23-year exile is over from the top flight. Steve Cooper's done an incredible job here. Won the playoff final yesterday. They made their worst start to a season for 108 years at the beginning of the season. Then they get rid of Chris Hughton. Steve Cooper comes in, the 14th manager they'd appointed since 2011. And apart from 1 week spent in the top 6 in February, they didn't get into the playoff places until April. So they were the form team in the division coming into the playoffs. They timed their run to perfection. And maybe we should have paid a little bit more attention to their cup run, beating Arsenal and then Leicester and then that 1-0 defeat to Liverpool. It was a pretty excellent run. Obviously, you've got Stephen Reid involved in the setup there. He's been linked with Wimbledon, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I saw that. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. You'd imagine he'll hang on and see where this Premier League journey goes for Nottingham Forest. But just a fantastic storyline to have back in the Premier League. Leeds getting promoted a few seasons ago. Nottingham Forest back in there. You've got a very, very good collection of 20 teams in the Premier League next season with plenty of narrative. And then at the top of our performance rankings this morning is, of course, Ronan O'Gara. Kevin has been in touch to say, egg on the face, and it's just been deleted. Egg on the face, and all the OTB crew tipped Leinster. None of you gave O'Gara team a chance. Kevin, of course, I presume, predicted La Rochelle to overturn the 12-point underdog tag that they had. Dave says, lads, I warned you about hubris. You might as well write the opposition team talk for them. And yeah, I mean, I predicted Leinster would win comfortably on Friday. I definitely bought all the hype around this, so it's interesting to see what the verdict will be on this. Obviously, the La Rochelle game plan was close to perfect, it seems, and I think that listening to Ronan O'Gara's post-match comments on BT on Saturday, they were very, very interesting. He said that he spotted nuggets in the Connacht game, in the Leicester game, and they utilised those or he said he had stuff to work on basically with those sort of nuggets that he got, and it clearly manifested itself in a brilliant game plan. And he was also very interesting talking about the end of the game, where he thought that Leinster could be hurt in the last 20 minutes, that Leinster kill a team come half time, and if you can hang in there at half time and still be in the mix, you've got a very, very good chance. And I think he was pretty happy with the scoreline at half time. The fact is, though, Leinster were up by 8 points and they were favourites before the game, and they were on paper, it seemed anyway, the better team. Maybe that's not true. Maybe we just totally misinterpreted this matchup completely. Maybe the bookies got it spectacularly wrong with a 12-point favourites tag beforehand. Or maybe Leinster, with an 8-point lead coming down the home stretch, should have done a lot better. And maybe they just completely bottled this on Saturday evening. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the truth is. I'm sure we'll probably get to the bottom of it as the week goes on.
Yeah, we're going to speak to Alan Quinlan in just a little while. I'd love to hear from the Leinster fans and supporters what they think, as opposed to the goading Munster fans. In fairness, goading Munster fans, today is your day. This is actually probably going to be your week, and who knows what the rest of the season is going to hold. It has the potential to go juddering off the tracks for Leinster at this point, but I don't know. I also don't know. Sometimes you get beaten in the final by a fairly amazing cup team who clearly have a bit of a maverick genius in charge, and does that mean that they didn't bottle it, or does that mean that they did? I don't know. Like you, I do know that there's no excuses. Like, they can't have any excuse about what happened. I mean, I see them kind of complaining a little bit about the refereeing, but like, you know, you've got the best team in Europe. By all the stats, by all of the available metrics that we have to analyse the match pre-match, you are the best team in Europe, and you put yourself in a position to deliver, and then you don't deliver. That is the ultimate kick in the teeth. Because
that is really interesting, because you talk about the stats there. That was one of the big storylines going into this game, is that when you looked at all the metrics that seemed to matter, it put Leinster on a pedestal above every other team in Europe. And then you listen to O'Gara afterwards, and it seemed that his game plan was quite an analytical one, that it was based in numbers. So I'm not sure did he just kind of interpret the data a little bit differently, or what it was, but it seems very, very interesting. Something happened in their pre-match analysis, and like he gave Donnacha Ryan plenty of credit in terms of what he was saying in his Tipperary French to the pack as well in the build-up to the week. And that pack obviously was always going to be a weapon that, if Skelton was fit, could have been something that was going to hurt Leinster. And as it proved, the winning try was exactly from a ball up the jumper sort of rugby.
When you saw the team being named and Skelton in it, did you feel a little bit like the morning where Joe Canning told you he wasn't going to retire, and then half an hour later he retired? Was it exactly the same as that when you had O'Gara on the show last week? I wasn't here. When you had O'Gara on the show and you're like, oh, Skelton played good. No, probably
actually,
not.
Yeah, no. You should clip that actually. Yeah, I think it was Adrian who asked him, is Skelton going to play? And he's like, no. But in fairness, and he did go on to say that there is
There's always a chance. I've told him to basically take the rest of the year off. I will see you next season for pre-season.
Well, it shouldn't. It wasn't the talk of Leinster that that whole vulnerability to power had been corrected. That it doesn't matter. You could have 8 Will Skeltons in that pack, and it wasn't going to matter a jot, because this Leinster team this season was a new Leinster, and they'd managed to get over the lessons of the Saracens games and the La Rochelle game, and they were back with back and burlier than ever, I think, was the Leinster tagline, wasn't it?
John says, thanks to Rog for giving every coach who will play Ireland a blueprint to stop them playing. Yeah, thanks, Rog, is basically some of the Leinster fans. I think it's fairly like that's how rugby works. Isn't it better that we learn this now as opposed to in the group stages of the Rugby World Cup next year? OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, we always on Sunday into Monday give you the opportunity to win a Gillette Labs shaving kit. To be in with a chance of winning, let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. The best place to enter is today on the YouTube, or you can tweet us at Off The Ball, and we'll read out the rest of your entries over the course of the rest of the show this morning. That is this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
You're done. Were there other shout-outs this week?
Were there other shout-outs this week?
Kildare could have been in the red, really, couldn't they?
Who could have been in the red?
Kildare could have been in the red.
Yeah, there's only so much time for throwing people under the bus on a Monday morning. Kildare could have been more red, Derry could have been more green, I think. And Galway definitely... Galway's just kind of nicely floating under the radar yesterday, I think, given the historic scenes that we saw in Clonus. So I don't know. It's that side of the championship is going to be very, very interesting. I think when you look at yesterday, though, I think you're looking at Derry as potential All-Ireland finalists.
We'll talk about that with Anthony Moyles a little bit later on.